Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High-impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mack Story.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for stopping by the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. Today, we're on part 28 of 30, focused on my book, Blue Collar Leadership and Culture, the 5 components for building high-performance teams. Today in chapter 28, we're going to talk about the leader relative to execution. Talking about the leader's role, the formal authority leader, the top leader. So chapter 28 is titled, The Leader is Always Responsible. And I got an opening quote here I want to share with you from Edgar Schein. This gentleman who I'm talking about, Edgar, I got to read some of his books. I haven't read any of his books. I've read some excerpts from some of his books, but he's apparently like a culture wizard. So I got to read some of his stuff. I got so many things I'm always reading. It's not that I'm never reading. I was reading something else, but I got some of his stuff on my list. One of these days I'm going to get to it. But I come across this quote, and I put it at the start of this chapter. And we'll share it with you now. And I've been talking to you about it through all these episodes related to this book. This is what Edgar Schein had to say. Culture is owned by the CEO, whether he or she admits it or not. That's powerful. It's simple. That's what I love about it. It's powerful, but it's simple. And it's 100% the truth. Remember way back in the beginning when I said the foundation of culture is the top leader's values. It relates to this quote right here. Edgar said it in a different way. Culture is owned by the CEO, whether he or she admits it or not. And there's a lot of leaders out there. There's a lot of big dogs, top dogs, whatever you want to call them. They won't admit it. They want to blame the people. They want to blame HR for hiring bad people. Well, guess who allows HR to be there and hire bad people? The top leader. A lot of times, the top leader wants to blame frontline supervision. Well, guess who's not developing frontline supervision? A lot of times, the leaders want to blame the frontline entry-level workforce. Guess who's responsible for that workforce and how they've been developed or not developed? And a lot of times, the leaders just blame everybody. But the culture is owned by the CEO, the top dog, the big dog. That's who owns the culture. They're either developing the character of the people or accepting it as it is. There ain't nobody on a top leader's team that top leader doesn't allow to be on the team. And you see, everybody else knows that. They know that the top leader is responsible. That's why top leaders who allow bad people to be on their team lose a lot of integrity with the people. Because the people know you can't keep it a secret. When there's a bad person on the team, there's no secret that the leaders above them are the ones that are allowing them to remain on the team. This stuff gets me fired up like you can't imagine. I hope it gets you fired up. If you're the top leader, go grow and develop your team. If you're not the top leader and you're listening to my podcast, please do whatever you have to do to go become a top leader in your organization, another organization, or start your own company. Our world needs all the help it can get. What do I mean? Our world needs character development. And when you run an organization, you have the ability to grow and develop a lot of people's character. if you value doing that. And if you work in an organization that doesn't value doing that, please go learn the stuff that I teach in my other books or stuff that other people teach in their books and go get you a better leader. Go find you a leader worth following. Now let's go back and talk about the top leader. And if there are any top leaders still listening, I'm proud of you because you're on the right mission. There might be some who heard that little talk I just gave and they went on and hit the stop button and moved on to something else. But see, those people, their culture is not going to change. They don't want to change. They don't want to take responsibility. That's what I'm talking about here. Is everyone else responsible for growing and developing themselves, regardless of whether the leader does or not? Absolutely. Responsibility lies on every individual. But I'm talking about if you're the top leader, you are officially responsible. You're officially responsible for growing and developing your team, character-wise. And you're either doing it or not doing it. This is something I like to talk about in a lot of my books, but it fits right here perfect, so it's in this book too. This thought I'm about to share with you. The leader is always making it happen, good or bad, and we're going to talk about these after I go through them. Allowing it to happen, good or bad, or preventing it from happening, good or bad. You see, when I'm talking about this, some leaders might feel a little like I'm rubbing them a little bit the wrong way. No, I'm talking about responsibility. Now, people who don't normally take responsibility, when they get talked to about taking responsibility, they feel a little bit offended. If you're feeling offended when I'm talking about this, you got a lot of work to do. Because I'm telling you, high impact leaders who are listening to me talk about this, they fired up right now. They ain't offended. They fired up. They want to go help me make this world a better place. They ain't worried about what I'm saying about them, because guess what? I ain't saying nothing about them. They're on my team. They ready to go kill it. They ready to go make it happen. That's why they're listening. But if a low impact leader stumbled across this and they're listening today, and this may be the first episode they've ever listened to anything like this, I'm telling you, there's some of them feeling offended. There's some of them that ain't listening anymore. They're so offended they done turned off this episode. And guess what? They ain't going to help us make this world a better place. Not until they get to work on themselves, and if they got that attitude, they may not ever do it. So again, thank you for listening. This is serious stuff. So let me break this down again, what I just shared with you. The leader's always making it happen, good or bad. And what I mean by that is the people expect leaders to make good things happen, right? Whoever your leader is, you expect them to make good things happen. And that's what they want to do. They want to make good things happen. But you know this just as much as I know it. They also make bad things happen. Most of the time, not on purpose. They just don't know what they don't know. Especially the farther up the chain, the org chart they are, the more bad stuff they make happen, and they don't even know it. Because most of them are not engaged with the folks farther down the org chart. They don't really know what's going on. Now let's talk about leader is always allowing it to happen, good or bad. See, they're doing one of these three things. They're either making it happen, allowing it to happen, or preventing it from happening. One of these three things that the leader is always doing in every situation: making it happen, allowing it to happen, or preventing it from happening. When we talk about leaders allowing things to happen, good or bad, we know that we want leaders, we want them to allow good things to happen. And that's what they should want to be doing. And they probably actually have that intention. Their intention is to allow good things to happen. But you know this too. Leaders allow a lot of bad stuff to happen. Just the way it is. And then we talk about leaders are always potentially preventing it from happening. It being whatever's going on. Leaders are preventing stuff from happening every day. Sometimes they're preventing good stuff from happening. Sometimes they're preventing bad stuff from happening. And we expect leaders to prevent bad stuff from happening. But again, you're just like me. You know, a lot of times leaders prevent good stuff from happening. All I'm saying is the leader's responsible. No matter what. If they're preventing good stuff from happening, they're responsible. If they're making bad stuff happen, they're responsible. If they're allowing bad stuff to happen, they're responsible. Likewise, if they're making good stuff happen, if they're allowing good stuff to happen, if they're preventing the bad stuff from happening so that good stuff can happen, they're responsible. Doesn't matter. What matters is they need to know they're responsible. If you're a formal authority leader, you need to know you're responsible. You as an individual need to know, forget about the leader, you're responsible for growing and developing yourself. And you already know that. That's why you're listening. Unless you're sitting around a table and the leader is playing this, your leader, and you're being required to listen. Then you may not know you're responsible for growing and developing yourself. But I want you to know you are, whether you admit it or not. If the only growth and development you're getting is when your leader requires you to get it, you got a long way to go. Life's going to be tough. So if a leader thinks he or she is not responsible for the culture of the organization, it's because they're a low-impact manager blaming others. They're even worse than a low-impact leader. They're a low-impact manager because they're managing people. They're not even leading people, not even attempting to lead people. They're not a high-impact leader taking responsibility. As soon as a person starts blaming another person, they're being a low-impact manager of people, even if they're not the boss. But if they are the boss, that's exactly what they're doing too. So I want to share with you a quote from Gary Ridge. Gary is the CEO of WD-40. A lot of blue-collar people know all about WD-40. A lot of white-collar people, they ain't never heard of it. Doesn't mean they're bad people. I'm just saying blue-collar people know about WD-40. So Gary Ridge, the CEO of WD-40, he provided a great example of what high-impact leadership looks like when he said this. He says, this is his quote from an article I read by Gary. This is what high-impact leadership looks like at the top. This is the top guy, CEO of WD-40. This is what he said. I am responsible for taking action, asking questions, getting answers, and making decisions. I won't wait for someone to tell me. If I need to know, I'm responsible for asking. I have no right to be offended that I didn't get this sooner. If I'm doing something others should know about, I'm responsible for telling them. That ends the quote from Gary. One of the cool things out of there is when he says, I have no right to be offended that I didn't get this sooner. You know, a lot of leaders, that's what they'll say when they get some information. Instead of being proud they got the information, they start blaming the messenger for not giving it to them sooner. Gary's saying, if I'm the leader, it's my job to go get it when I need it. If I didn't get it sooner, it's because I wasn't asking the right questions at the right time. That's high-impact leadership. That's a leader that says, I'm responsible. There is no one else to blame. When I didn't get it sooner, it's my fault. That's some good stuff right there. That's good stuff. That's a top-level leader who's modeling what I'm talking to you about. That's a leader worth following right there. And I believe WD-40, because I did some research on Gary, I believe their headquarters out in San Diego. I actually sent him a copy of this book because I got a couple of his quotes in it. This type of high-impact leadership above will lead to the same type of high-impact leadership below. Because remember, leadership's more caught than taught. What I'm saying, though, is a leader like this above you, no matter what level they're at and what level you're at, it's principles. When the leader above you leads, like the quote that I just shared from Gary, when they lead like that, the people on the org chart that report to them are more likely to lead like that and be like that. When a leader takes responsibility, that character trait becomes contagious. That's why I say leadership's more caught than taught. The top leaders' values are the foundation of the culture. They determine the culture. So if you're a top level leader or you're a formal leader at any level, you got to become what you want your team to be. You got to be that first. You got to catch it so you can spread it, because this kind of stuff is contagious. When you model it, you live it, you expect it. The leader is always responsible. So let's look at kind of the other side. I'm talking about modeling, because there's a other side of modeling. A lot of times the leaders don't model the good stuff. They model the bad stuff. Again, doesn't mean they're a bad person, but does mean they could be a much better leader. When leaders allow something to slide that should be corrected, they are co-signing and silently signaling to everyone watching, I've determined that choice or that behavior to be acceptable. Since it's okay for that person to do it, it's okay for you to do it too. I'm going to say that little quote again. I've determined that choice or that behavior to be acceptable. Since it's okay for that person to do it, it's okay for you to do it too. And I remember I used to talk about this when I worked in the plants, and I was responsible for lean in the plant that I worked in. And I also talked about it when I was consulting lean, but I'm talking about now when I actually still worked in the manufacturing plant. And I was responsible for lean. And I'd see leaders walking through a department that reported to them. You know, an upper level leader, a manager, going out to a department where there was a department supervisor and a team leader and a team working. When the top leader comes in and he walks by trash, later on privately, hopefully close to the situation, I go over and ask him, I say, hey man, you see that trash you just walked by? And I had a good relationship with the people if I'm saying it the way I'm saying it to you. They may have saw it or they may not have saw it. But I pointed out, you just walked right past that. You just co-signed to everybody that saw you walk past it that it's okay to walk past trash on the floor. That's what you just taught. And if you're a leader and you're responsible for cleanliness in it, wherever, if you walk out to the workspace, at a workplace, you walk by trash, everybody who saw you walk past it, you just taught them it's okay to walk past trash. Even if you gather them up and say, why is this place so dirty? Y'all need to pick up the trash. The reason they need to pick up the trash is because you walk by the trash. That's some leadership truth right there. And I'll tell you a story about, we heard Dan Cathy, the current, he's Truett Cathy's son, Dan Cathy, president and CEO of Chick-fil-A. And I heard him speak one time. He was talking about servant leadership. He was giving us, the people in the room, he was giving us an example of somebody asked him, what does servant leadership look like at Chick-fil-A? And he thought a minute and he said, I'll tell you what it looks like. It looks like when I park at the corporate headquarters, and Rhea and I have been there a couple of times. It's a pretty big place. Got a big parking lot. He said, when I pull into the Chick-fil-A headquarters, it doesn't matter how many cars are there or not there. I park in the parking place farthest from the front door. He said, when I go into the Chick-fil-A headquarters, I want to know that no one walked farther to get to the front door than I did. So I park in the farthest parking place. That's pretty powerful. He ain't got a front row parking spot with a big sign on it that says Dan Cathy or CEO. That ain't in his blood right there. He parks in the farthest parking place so that he has to walk the farthest to the door. He don't feel entitled to get the shortest distance. He's a leader. He's a high impact leader. But he said something else too. He said, and as I walk into the headquarters every day, and as I walk out, I pick up trash on the way in and I pick up trash on the way out. He said, you know, the interesting thing is I never have to tell people to pick up trash. The other interesting thing is I'd never have too much trash to pick up because everybody picks up trash. See, that's a simple little thing to do. It's a symbol, though. When it comes to trust, you just think about this. I don't know who you are, what level you're at, but you think about this. If you didn't know anything about a leader except one thing, and I'm going to use an example of two different leaders. You get to decide which one you want to follow. You get to decide which one you trust the most. Everything else about this leader, you don't know nothing about him. You got this only one thing to know about. One leader parks the farthest away from the front door, picks up trash on the way in, trash on the way out. He wants to have to walk the farthest to the front door than anybody. The second leader, the very closest spot to the front door, has a big sign that says CEO. And he or she pulls in right there every day and walks the shortest distance to the front door. They don't pick up trash. If they see some trash, they walk through the front door and they go tell somebody there's trash out front and need to pick it up. If that's all you know about a leader, somebody says, I'm going to hire you today, I'm going to tell you this one thing about these two leaders. You get to pick which leader you want to work with. Which one would it be? I know which one it'd be. It'd be the same one for you as it is for me. It'd be the one parking far away from the door, giving them front parking spot to somebody who deserves it more than they do, who's going to be humble enough to pick up trash on the way in and the way out. The reason I told you that story is these things are symbols, and they create trust and distrust in an organization. The leaders with pride and ego, they don't even see this stuff. They miss it. You know, when the first time I went to Chick-fil-A headquarters, I think it was the first time, I was there to speak with Deanne Turner. At the time, she was the vice president of talent, which is kind of like in most organizations would be the vice president of human resources. But they don't call it that at Chick-fil-A because Chick-fil-A is different. It's one reason they are different when you go in and experience the service and the cleanliness and the quality in a Chick-fil-A restaurant. They're different because they're different. That's why they don't call it HR, because they're different. They have different values. They call it the vice president of talent. The people who work there are considered talent, not resources. But anyway, when we went there, I told Deanne that story that I had heard Dan Cathy tell. And I just wanted somebody to validate it that wasn't named Dan Cathy. I said, is that true? She said, oh, yeah, that's true. She said, but I got a better story than that. I said, okay, what? Tell me that one. She said, that's true about Dan parking farthest away and walking in, picking up trash. And she said, all the leaders park far away. Guess what? They following the leader. That's what happens. But she said, there's something better than that. And Jimmy Collins, who is a personal friend and mentor to me and Rhea, has been for the last 5 years. He was Truett Cathy's third employee, I believe, in 1967, 68. And he worked with Truett as his, the number 2 guy at Chick-fil-A for 33 years. He retired in 2001 when they reached $1 billion in sales, from startup to $1 billion in sales. And Jimmy retired as president and chief operating officer in 2001. I met him in 2015. It's pretty neat. Deanne said, she told me this story about Jimmy. She said it was nothing to get off the off-ramp out here. The Chick-fil-A headquarters is probably only like a quarter mile off of a main expressway. You basically get off the expressway, get off the expressway, stop at the light, turn left, go back across the expressway, and then pretty quick turn left into the Chick-fil-A headquarters. So that was the way I just described, is the way that Jimmy came to work every day. And so did Deanne. Deanne said it was nothing to see Jimmy parked on the off-ramp of the expressway with his emergency flashers on, picking up trash. He wasn't at the Chick-fil-A headquarters parking lot picking up trash. He was at the off-ramp from the expressway leading into Chick-fil-A, which is very close, to the entrance. And she said it was nothing to see him out there fairly often doing that. So later, because Jimmy is a friend of mine, later I'm talking to Jimmy and I said, Deanne told me this story about you stopping with your emergency flashers on, picking up trash on the off-ramp of the expressway. I said, you did that? He's like, yeah, I did it. He said, I wanted people to know when they got close to Chick-fil-A that we were different. And he says, you know what, Mac? He said, I really didn't have to pick up that much trash, because a lot of times when I was getting off of that off-ramp, there were other Chick-fil-A people there with their emergency flashers on picking up trash. And he never had to tell them. I say this all the time. Leadership is more caught than taught. I just gave you two perfect examples. Leaders didn't tell them to pick up trash. They didn't tell them where to pick up the trash. But people started doing it because their leaders are contagious. They trusted their leaders. They wanted to model what their leaders were modeling. It's pretty powerful little examples. I got millions of them. Those are the ones that came to mind today. If you know me, you know I speak from my subconscious. When I start talking on these episodes, I know basically what I'm going to talk about. I got a few bullet points, but I don't know literally what I'm going to say to talk about what I'm going to talk about. I know there's points I'm going to teach you, but what I'm going to say to emphasize it, I never know. Same way when I go on stage. Sometimes I tell people, I bet you're wondering what I'm going to say today. So am I. I always know what I'm going to talk about, but I don't ever know what I'm going to say, because I want it to be authentic. And I'm reading and I'm studying and I'm living and I'm learning. So a lot of times I teach something that's new to support whatever point I'm teaching that's old. So when leaders allow something to slide that should be corrected, they're co-signing and silently signaling to everyone watching. I'm saying this again. I said it earlier. I've determined that a choice of that choice or that behavior is acceptable. Since it's okay for that person to do it, it's okay for you to do it too. I just wanted to reemphasize that, because bad behavior is caught and taught, so is good behavior. General Colin Powell stated this. He said, leaders who do not have the guts to immediately correct minor errors or shortcomings cannot be counted on to have the guts to deal with big things. I'm going to say that one again. Leaders who do not have the guts to immediately correct minor errors or shortcomings cannot be counted on to have the guts to deal with big things. And again, relative to what I've shared with you just before I shared that quote, doesn't mean you go tell somebody to pick up the trash. That's how a manager corrects it. A manager of people corrects it by going tell someone else to do it. I'm talking to you about leadership, high impact leadership. A high impact leader can correct it by starting to pick up trash. An interesting thing about Dan and Kathy is I've heard other leaders, Dan didn't say this, it could have been Jimmy Collins or Deanne Turner, I don't remember, probably was Jimmy Collins, but I really can't remember. Whoever it was that told me, when I shared that story about Dan, they said that's just who he is. He picks up trash everywhere he goes. It doesn't matter where he's at. He values picking up trash and not living in a dirty world. That's pretty powerful. He doesn't just pick up trash to send his team a message. He picks up trash to make the world a cleaner place. Pretty powerful. But every time, this is a quote from Stephen R. Covey, author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Every time you open your mouth, you create culture. Every time. Good or bad. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mack Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mack's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.